So it's no secret that the Jazz have been in a bit of a rebuild over the past couple years, and it seems like the fan base is a bit torn as to how the front office has handled the rebuild process. So I wanted to make a video about my thoughts on the rebuild and how it's going, and give a little backstory as to how we got here in the first place, because it has been quite an interesting rebuild, but I still have faith in it. I still think that the Jazz are in a good trajectory and in a good position going forward. So back in 2021, 2022, the Jazz had legit championship aspirations.
I think the Utah Jazz can win the championship. They got the coach of the year. They got 2 All-Stars.
Are you convincing me or are you telling me?
They got the 6th man of the year. They got the 6th man of the year.
But year after year, the Jazz just kind of hit a wall come the second round of the playoffs. And in 2022, the Jazz lost in 6 games to the Dallas Mavericks, and that was kind of the final straw of this failed experiment that was the Utah Jazz. It was still a pretty young core at the time with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and it was a team that looked extremely promising throughout the regular season and into the first round of the playoffs. But year after year, it just kind of seemed like they got out-schemed by the opposing teams in a 7-game series. And aside from all the play on the court, there were some off the court issues as well, with rumors swirling about the relationship between Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. It seemed to get really messy behind the scenes in the locker room, and it was just obvious to everyone that some big changes were coming. So as most people know, the Jazz got rid of Quinn Snyder. They traded Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell for a treasure trove of draft picks and also some good young talent. The rebuild was officially underway, and I would say the optimism was pretty high that the Jazz could maybe tank that year and be in position to possibly get one of the best draft picks in the history of basketball in Victor Wembanyama. However, things didn't quite go that season the way most had planned. The Jazz got off to a surprisingly hot start with a 10-3 record to start the season. Now, that would be a bit short-lived as they would go on to lose 8 of the next 10 following, but the remainder of the season kind of played out in a roller coaster of mediocrity, and I would say it left half the fan base pretty frustrated because they were kind of out of the conversation to get Wembanyama at that point, while the other half of the fan base was just really having fun watching this team of outcasts and misfits playing a pretty fun brand of basketball, no matter how mediocre they were. Now, the season ended with them semi-committing to the tank. They positioned themselves into a lottery pick, but really had zero shot at Victor Wembanyama. However, they did come out of that draft class with some pretty solid pickups with Taylor Hendricks and Keontae George. 2 guys I would say had a legit shot at being starters on an NBA team, but at the same time, they weren't likely to be franchise-changing players. And with Keontae George having such a great showing in his first NBA Summer League, and the following draft class considered to be one of the worst in recent memory, maybe the Jazz could mess around, win some games, make a play-in tournament, then reassess things for the 2025 draft, which many considered to be one of the best draft classes in recent memory, with guys like Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper. If you're in the top 5 in that draft, you really can't go wrong. Well, January rolled around and the Jazz found themselves with a 2020 record, painfully mediocre, objectively one of the worst positions a team can find itself in, especially in the NBA. You're not really in position to get a top 5 pick in that year's draft, and you're also not really in position to make the playoffs. Granted, after some trades, they did go on to be one of the worst teams in the league to end the season, losing 25 of 30 games down the stretch, including a stint of 13 losses in a row. And even after all of that losing, they still only found themselves with the 8th best odds in the lottery. And just to add insult to injury, they actually dropped 2 spots to 10 once the actual lottery took place, which, funny enough, was about the same odds of them actually winning the lottery. So the Jazz historically don't have a great record with the lottery. However, even after all of that, I still believe that things are starting to look up. Even with them dropping 2 spots to number 10, I still think they came away with one of the best classes in all of the 2024 draft. With pick number 10, they came away with Cody Williams out of Colorado, a long, athletic wing player which is in high demand in the league. This is a player that can handle the ball, that can play defense, has a good shooting motion, and has already shown a lot in this year's Summer League. And if he's anything like his brother Jalen at Oklahoma City, I think he's going to be a fan favorite in no time at all. Moving on to pick number 29, they somehow came away with USC point guard Isaiah Collier. This is a strong, although slightly undersized point guard who has really good passing ability, can shoot the ball, can play good defense, and coming out of high school was actually ranked the #1 prospect in the country. His stock did fall a little bit after his freshman year at USC, but I'm inclined not to put the blame so much on Isaiah as I do on just the USC coaching staff in general. It just seemed like kind of a dysfunctional situation altogether last year. They very much so underperformed as a team. And I'm really intrigued as to what that backcourt could look like with Isaiah Collier at point guard and Keontae George at shooting guard. They would be a little bit undersized on defense, but that's so much playmaking potential in the backcourt. It'd be really fun to watch this season. And just icing on the cake, after one of the strangest situations that I've seen in the draft in a long time, the Jazz were able to snag Kyle Filipowski out of Duke. He was projected by a lot of mock drafts to go somewhere in the mid to lower part of the first round, but was able to fall to the second round to the Jazz after a pretty crazy story broke about his girlfriend isolating him from his family. And I don't know all the details. Let me know if you guys actually want me to make a video on that. I can look into it. Whatever the story was, it doesn't seem to be affecting him too much on the court. He's had a pretty solid performance so far in the Summer League, and I'm just happy that he was able to drop to the Utah Jazz because they got a ton of value for that second round pick. I think his ceiling could be somewhere around the Kelly Olynyk range, maybe even a little bit better than that at his top end. But even if he is another version of Kelly Olynyk who can pass the ball, shoot the three, and play down low, that would be an amazing addition to the Jazz. And like I said, it would be a huge value for getting a pick out of the second round. Overall, I think you have to be extremely excited with the players that the Jazz were able to come away with in this year's draft, considering it was supposed to be one of the worst drafts in a long time. And in my opinion, I think the rebuild for the Jazz is right on track. That being said, I think this year is going to be make or break. I mean, rumors have been swirling online of the front office being in deep trade talks with multiple teams about Lauri Markkanen, which really pains me to say because it seems like Lauri, since he came to Utah, was able to really develop into his full potential. And I think he's played well enough to demand somewhere close to max money by the team, which the Jazz can pay, but I'm not sure that is the best move for the franchise going forward. It does kind of seem like with so much smoke, they are leaning towards finding a draft package for him, but knowing Danny Ainge, he's not going to get anything but top dollar for him. So if the Jazz do end up having to bring him back and pay him, I don't think that ruins the tank either. Bottom line is, I think most Jazz fans are on the same page that Utah does have to commit to the tank this year. I think the best decision is to roll out some kind of Summer League team for the duration of the season, lose a lot of games, put yourself in a position to get Cooper Flagg. I understand it's a long shot. Even if you do have the worst record in the league, it's not guaranteed at all. But the top of this next draft is so deep. If you can just get anywhere in the top 5, you're getting a potential star right away. And I don't think that's an opportunity that the Jazz want to or can afford to pass up. And if by some miracle the Jazz position themselves and do end up getting the #1 pick in the 2025 draft, Cooper Flagg looks as sure of a thing as you can get for an NBA prospect. And if you shoot for Cooper Flagg and end up getting Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper, that wouldn't be a bad deal either. Either way, I'm going to be patient. I'm going to trust in Danny Ainge in the front office. I'm going to have fun watching Isaiah Collier, Cody Williams, Keontae George, Kyle Filipowski develop this season. Hopefully they lose a lot of games and we see what happens with the ping pong balls. But let me know your guys' thoughts about the Jazz rebuild so far down below in the comments section. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.